On one page, he had a list of goals that read, go to other countries, you will be a serial killer and a mass murderer, stay alone, never forget God, ever, have a cult and plan a mass kidnapping for a new world, be an expert thief. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, folks. Michael was also writing extensive lists about who he wanted to kill and how he would do it. And his hit list was long. He had his sister on there, a few boys from school, and for some reason, Jaime's name was on the list too. I thought he liked Jaime. Michael could be heard talking about how he'd have to stab himself in order to show emotion. He also told his girlfriend that if he would have become a serial killer, he'd have a signature of taking his victim's eye and carving a cross into their forehead. Michael Hernandez was born on February 2nd, 1990, the youngest child of Manny and Kathy Hernandez, with a much older sister named Christina. Michael's mother said he was a curious, bright, and talkative child. He always smiled and was quick to give bunny ears to friends in photos. When he entered Southwood Middle School, he was even made a part of the school's gifted program. In 2004, Michael Hernandez was the textbook definition of your average 8th grade middle schooler. He had a good home and normal hobbies like any other kid his age. One thing Michael valued more than anything else, though, was his friends. And everyone knew that his best friend in the whole entire school was Jaime Goff. Jaime was an amazing student. He had straight A's, played the violin, and also attended the Southwood Performing Arts Center. Classmates described him as a pacifist who loved animals. Jaime was the more quiet, funny one that only told jokes to his friends. Classmates even said that if there was anyone Michael would have shared a secret with, it would have been Jaime, because they were best friends and always together. The boys were so close, they even worked on a school project at each other's houses around Christmas and met both of their families' respective parents. The same former 7th grade teacher said Michael never got into trouble, just normal trouble that middle schoolers got into, walking around the classroom when he shouldn't, telling jokes in class that would disrupt the lesson with fits of laughter. While these things seemed fine on the surface, teachers began to hear rumors in the whispers of students around school that there was something else about Michael's behavior that was a bit off. There was 2 occasions in particular that went under the school's radar. The first was when Michael brought a knife into a classroom and showed it off to his classmates. The second, when he had punched a student and didn't have any memory of doing so. But according to Michael's classmates, he seemed fine. Just, again, a bit weird. In particular, there was a classmate of Michael's that sat near him in the computer class. He revealed that Michael would occasionally visit porn websites in class, or even worse, sites depicting dead and dismembered corpses. His mother, Kathy, said that he began to get really into exercising, and that it started to build up from there. He would have a list, she said. A list of things he was going to do every day by his bed in the morning. He began to open and close the door between the house and the garage a fixed number of times before entering, or he'd even face his fork in a certain direction after eating at the table. There were also times where he'd stand in front of the fridge and just open and close both sides multiple times without taking anything out. But that's when Kathy stated that the whole family thought that Michael was doing all this just for attention, to annoy them, which she said was working. On record, Kathy never said the family lashed out at him, but it's not hard to imagine since she did say that he became more withdrawn from the family as teenagers do. If only they had tried to look behind the closed doors, they might have been able to see or even stop the next disturbing part of her story. Police would later discover that in his room, Michael had been doing extensive research and study of famous serial killers like Ted Bundy in his journals. Prosecutors released several of these journals that detailed the boy's fascinations with violence. He planned to kill Jaime in 7 steps, using simple materials like a jacket, knife, gloves, and tape. He'd invite him into the bathroom, take his life with a knife, stash his weapon and jacket in his bag, and then clean himself up and then leave. And after he completed the task, he wrote in his 8th step that he needed to thank God for success first, then Minnie and Pearlie and Stopper. It's a reference to his family's pets. Michael spent months or even years working on these journals, and in February of his 8th grade year, he was ready to put it all into practice. On February 3rd, 2004, Michael's mom left for work before he rode the bus with the neighbors to Southwood Middle School. He had everything he needed in his backpack. Latex gloves that his mother had purchased for him under Michael's lie that they were for a science project, a hat, jacket, tape, and a gravity knife given to him by his father a few years before that. Michael went to school determined to finish his list that day because of his failure the day before. On the 2nd, Michael had tried to lure both Jaime and another friend, Andre, into a bathroom stall saying that he had something interesting to show them. But as he tried to complete his plan, the two boys were saved by Andre's intuition to not go in and also the school bell. Andre later told police that he felt something was off and didn't understand why Michael was trying to get all three of them to enter a stall together. He also recalled times when Michael had told them before how he was interested in becoming a serial killer. Andre said he never took that line from Michael very seriously. Although the bell had saved them, Michael asked if the two boys would come back and look inside the stall the next day. The boys agreed, but Andre decided to stay home from school the next day. Back on the 3rd of February, Michael again determined to see his plan through that day. Searched for his two friends. It was 8:30 in the morning on the 2nd floor of the school, and he finally found Jaime in the hall before any classes had started that day. They talked like they'd always did, laughing, telling jokes, as kids do. Everyone that was interviewed later commented that when they saw that pair, it looked like two best friends talking. Michael then invited Jaime into the bathroom and said he had something interesting to show him in the handicap stall. Jaime followed, and Michael locked the stall behind him. Michael repeated to Jaime that he wanted to show him something, so he asked him to turn around. During that time, he quickly put on his latex gloves, he drew his knife, and grabbed to cover Jaime's mouth so he couldn't scream. He held the knife to his throat, but Jaime struggled and tried to fight back, begging Michael with what force he could to not kill him. Michael lied and said he wouldn't take his life if he cooperated, so Jaime relaxed, struggled less, and that's when Michael stabbed Jaime in the neck. It would be reported that Michael had stabbed Jaime almost 40 times and slashed both his jugular veins along with Jaime's windpipe. Michael stabbed Jaime's body a few more times to check and make sure that he was dead. Michael then gathered the gear, knife, and jacket and shoved them all in his backpack. He flushed his gloves down the toilet before propping Jaime's body on top of the seat and then just leaving the stall. Michael went to the sink to wash off some of the blood that had gotten on his hands, and at that time, another student walked in. The student saw Jaime's shadowy figure in the stall from the sinks and also the blood pooling on the ground. The student turned to Michael and asked if they should do something. Michael replied, "Yeah, we should tell somebody." But Michael returned to class and didn't tell anyone. The student immediately informed a teacher that the whole school went into a complete lockdown. Administrators were quoted later as saying, at the time, they were unsure if the crime had been committed by a student or a teacher. The school moved in fast to call the police and other authorities to find the murderer. But Michael's teacher noticed some blood on his shirt and immediately contacted the authorities. When the police arrived, they found the blood-stained jacket and knife in Michael's bag and took him into custody. Before Michael's parents arrived at the station, the police said Michael had given several different versions of what had happened. In one of these versions, Michael included some story about how Jaime was killed by a teenager named Sangre. It's blood in Spanish. His mother, Kathy, later said, "We were still in the mindset that he had seen something. They didn't tell us we should be looking for an attorney." Michael later admitted that Sangre was imaginary and confessed to be the murderer. Michael's attorneys worked hard to get him off on an insanity plea, especially since he was a minor. But the jury wouldn't budge and agreed that Michael was guilty of premeditated murder and would serve a life sentence in prison. The school and community rallied around Jaime's parents, Jorge and Maria Goff, by honoring Jaime's life through various memorial services. In the 2004 Southwood yearbook, Jaime's friends placed a full-page memorial in the back of the book with the boys' 8th grade school picture along with an acrostic poem that read, "Joyful, always there, intellectual, musical, elite." A ceremony was also held 1 year later after the murder during the school's Peace Week, all organized by the student council to shake the cloud that had descended upon the school and the community. And on that day, the students formed a circle around Jaime's parents, and the family released a basket full of butterflies, an insect that Jaime had loved. News outlets reported that one butterfly even landed on Maria's shoulder and remained there for the most of the ceremony. While a murderer behind bars is where our stories usually end, for Michael, he was pretty close to getting out. In 2016, the Supreme Court banned automatic life sentences for juveniles. Michael at that time claimed he was a changed man, and so his lawyers made a bid for his early release in February of 2016. Michael took the stand and gave a tearful apology to Jaime's parents who were in attendance during his 2016 resentencing hearing. "For how much pain I have caused you, I'm sorry," he said. And at that time, Andre, Michael's almost victim, completely rejected it. "I found it to not be genuine," said Andre. The prosecutors were also not convinced, but knew they needed hard evidence to keep him behind bars. And then they struck gold by revealing Michael's phone records. Michael's recorded jailhouse calls between him and his girlfriend were played in court by the prosecution. Thankfully, the jury and judge recognized this as well, and Michael's life sentence was upheld. But in April of 2001, Michael suddenly died in his prison cell. No foul play was involved. A medical examiner stated that it was a simple case of a heart attack brought on by morbid obesity. Michael was just 31 years old.